Ready? Yes, sir. We'll call the May 7th, 2025 meeting in Administrative Services Committee to order. Roll call first on the agenda. Pam?
Here.
Eric?
Here.
John? Here. Paul?
Here.
And I'm here. We're missing two. Matt's got a family emergency and Terry said she'll be here any minute. So, all right. Can I have a motion to approve the minutes from April 2nd? Moved by Pam, seconded by John. Any changes or corrections? Not seeing any of those. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion is approved. Public comment, any sign in?
We have none.
Okay.
Let's go.
Any member comments? I'll go once. Okay. We are already down to routine consent agenda. Does anybody have anything they want to change or remove from the routine consent agenda? John?
7-1 and 7-2.
7-1 and 7-2. I have a motion to approve 7-3 and 7-4.
So moved.
Is there a second? Paul? All right. We go to vote on that. Pam?
Yes.
Eric?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Paul?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Can I have a motion to approve 7-1 and then we'll just have a discussion? Moved by John, seconded by
I'll second it.
Pam. You have the floor, John.
I don't know if anyone from adult here.
I can handle it.
Okay. I know that this resolution is just as a formality for HR to adjust these salaries and things like that.
Thank you. It is kind of just an acknowledgement.
Yeah.
It's been clear that the mental health board has the authority to do this.
Right.
But they are on our payroll system. Our payroll system is pretty rigid. We're not going to move things in payroll without an acknowledgement of the county board.
Right. I mean, it's more of a comment that, when I read through what these people are going to be doing, it would seem to me these are things that are done in the normal course of business. And I'm not, what additional hours people may be working or not working. It just seems like with mental health and spending the last 6 to 9 months talking about finances and money, there was an opportunity here to save the complete amount of money versus part of the money. It was just a simple comment I wanted to make in regards to that. So.
Any other comments on this item?
Nothing other than I agree with you, and I'll be voting no on it. Either way, it's going to go to committee of the whole and committee or board meeting. But
okay. All right, John, or I'll go to vote. John.
No.
Paul.
No.
Pam.
Well, dang, I'll say yes just to be obstinate.
Eric. And I'll vote yes. Terry, you get to vote without knowing anything at all. Item 7.1.
Well, that's normal.
I would not vote. I would let it go if you aren't prepared. There are 1, 2,
It doesn't
3
matter.
no's and 2
It
yeses.
doesn't matter. It's
So
going to the full board
yeah,
after.
Okay.
right, it is.
you want to join the majority?
But I would say you would vote no, but I can't vote.
Oh, I'll vote no.
Okay.
I trust my process.
So,
You would. I promise you would vote no.
the only 2 yes votes were Pam and I. That should
No,
give
2
you
yes, we were yeses, yeah.
only 2 yes votes. So anyway, okay. That matter fails, but it does go on to the full board for further discussion. 7.2, can I have a motion so we can discuss that? By John, second by Pam. John, again, you have the floor.
Thank you. Just really more of a comment here. I did spend some time talking to Carrie about this yesterday and understand what's going on and happening. And more importantly, I want to recognize Carrie, Scott, and Joe for working together on this to identify opportunities that exist internally that help all the departments and plus save us some money. So thank you for that. I appreciate it very much.
You're welcome.
Any other comments or questions on 7.2? All right, I'm going to go back to roll call. We're starting over on this side. John, since you had the floor. Go ahead.
Yes. Yes.
Paul, yes. Terry?
Yes.
Pam?
Yes.
Yes.
Eric? And I'll vote yes. That matter is approved. The old business we have is on discussion items. I don't have any other old business. Scott, you get to talk to us about ethics ordinance changes.
Well, I'm happy to do so. I'm going to share your screen. Yeah. I will be sharing my screen. I'm going to pull up a document that was emailed out in March, so you had a chance to take a look at it, and I believe was included in the packet for this meeting. So you have a full public display for the record and for the audience. Scott Hartman, Deputy County Administrator, and one of my roles, I serve as staff liaison to your Ethics Commission. As a reminder, the Ethics Commission is the body that is appointed, recommended by the Administrative Services Committee, appointed by the board to really enforce and implement the ethics ordinance to hold all the county employees, well, not all, but those employees under its jurisdiction to the high standards to which the county believes. Since June of last year, they have been diligently reviewing the ethics ordinance to look at areas for clarity, for changes, and had provided a series of recommendations that are before you today. And really, I think the intent is we want to just walk through what those recommendations are, have a discussion. It's not for a vote today, it's just simply discussion and get some direction. So bear with me as I share my screen. And all right, we're going to pull up the right one. Okay. Oh, that's the summary of changes. I'm going to pull up the red line document. That's not it. I apologize. I have it up, I just can't find it in the Teams list of documents. I've got too much open, apparently.
It is attached to the discussion item. If you can go to that on the agenda, you should be able to pull it up. There's a red line version of it there.
Yeah, that I could, but if I make any changes, I want to change it in my document on my computer. So that way I have it. I think if I close enough. Oh, come on. All right. Where the heck is I closed this? Okay. My apologies. It's here.
You're going to be stuck. Just go to the other one and.
Okay. All right. Well, then that's what we'll do. We'll do the summary of changes. But actually, I closed it down, thinking it was blocking this document.
It's on the other computer right there.
Okay.
Go ahead, throw it on.
Greg, can you give me a hint? Why am I not finding it? Okay. So now I lost my Teams. Can I close out of the Teams meeting?
You might have. Let's see. Yes, you are no longer in our Teams meeting.
Okay.
So you have to rejoin. Is this the document you want?
No, this is not the document I want to close. This is the document that I want. And
So if you just hit that right there, and then take your use of
Is this it right here? You should be looking at it here. Is that something?
yeah, but I got to keep the source though. That probably makes any changes here. So
That's what paper's for, Scott. Just put one up on the board so we can go forward. We don't have
So
to
then
draft
go
it in
to calendar.
form here.
and then join. Get out of the way and close. And then join.
Because we're watching that thing.
no.
Right, you're back.
All right.
We're not making.
Now I want to share.
And you could just share the whole screen and then just search for it. Yeah, right there.
Oh, okay. So.
And you are now sharing.
All right, now.
There it is. All right.
All right. Thank you, Greg.
The forum was lost in the meantime, but here we are.
Okay. All right. Okay. All right. Now we can roll. Sorry about that. So a lot of the changes were really nominal, whether typos or some things that were to make clear the definitions. the important thing to remember about the ethics ordinance is while it applies to the county as an organization, certain offices are exempted under the ethics ordinance. The circuit clerk, the state's attorney's office, the judiciary, and also the public defender. One of the key changes they made was to clarify that the public defender was exempted. The reason why they're exempted is because they are, in essence, employees of the state, not of the county. Whereas like your sheriff, your auditor, your county board members, your county employees, we're all members of the county. So that's why there's a little different in the jurisdiction. Not to say that those offices do not have their own ethics ordinance, which they're beholden, they just are not under yours. So when you read the ethics ordinance, you'll see that kind of distinction, and that's important to keep in mind as we go through. So it applies to most of the employees of the county, but not all. So some of the key definitions I really want to draw your attention to, and if there's any that jump out at you and I gloss over or go over because I think they may be less substantial, please bring those to my attention. We could talk about those. But the ones I've highlighted, I really just want you just to be aware of because I think they are a little bit more substantial. In the definitions under prohibited source, so it's in definition so Z. If I go too fast too and you get nauseous, please let me know too. So prohibited source, this really refers to the Gift Ban Act, those to whom we can receive a gift, and there's a restriction on who can provide gifts of over $100 to any employee. And the Ethics Commission, upon their review, really wanted to make sure that there's a level playing field among all the employees. And one of the things that really was omitted from the ethics ordinance was those seeking candidacy, because it was concerned that if you are, let's say if you are already an elected official of the county under the ethics ordinance and you're running for office, you are beholden to this ethics ordinance. But if you were running for that office and you were not an incumbent, then you weren't subject to it. So there are certain things that the ethics ordinance would apply to the incumbent seeking a re-election versus the opponent who wasn't seeking re-election. So there's a couple areas in which the Ethics Commission said, you know what, we've got to level that playing field. It should apply to both. So you're going to see that in the definition of prohibited source and further down, it references candidates because it wants to draw on candidates to be under the ethics ordinance, just like an incumbent elected official running for re-election. So it's important to note. That was included starting with the definition of a prohibited source. And then secondly, we go to prohibited political activity. And I'm sorry, this is too where the candidate comes into play. It's on the prohibited political activity. You see the candidate has been included as under the jurisdiction of the ethics ordinance. So once again, that's an important distinction because previously candidates were not included unless you were an incumbent running for re-election. If you were an outsider, you were free from the jurisdiction of the ethics ordinance. So you see that in here a couple times. So prohibited political activity as candidate to level that playing field. Moving further down under the Gift Ban Act. So the Gift Ban Act, this really restricts what we can receive as county officials or those under the ethics ordinance from a prohibited source, say a vendor or somebody seeking a contract or looking to do business with the county or looking for some official action from the county. The intent is basically to stop them from saying, hey, let's give you a trip to Honolulu and all expenses paid. We want to make sure that we're going to do our work without that kind of influence or even the possibility of that influence. So the gift ban prohibits what an employee or an elected official under the ethics ordinance can get, and that would be no more than something of $100 per calendar year in value or in monetary. And secondly, it limits the amount of food. Like if somebody takes you out to dinner, it caps at $75 per day. So when the Ethics Commission was reviewing this, they said, well, there's a few areas in the ethics ordinance that kind of are loopholes or gaps. And if you see this under the Gift Ban Act, somebody can really exploit those. So they made a few changes, and in the In the prohibitions, or the exceptions that do not violate the Gift Ban Act, there's a series of those. And you can see that a couple of things are like educational fact-finding missions. So let's say if you were researching something on behalf of the county and you need to go to somewhere to see it in practice, we could consider that a fact-finding mission. But it doesn't really go into much detail or tie that fact-finding mission into something that's reasonable or rational. So they wanted to add language that said fact-finding missions that are short-term in nature and directly related to one's job's duties. Like, for example, if, in my duties as a deputy county administrator, which are pretty broad, if somebody says, hey, send Scott Hartman to look at something that's really specifically transportation related, that's going to be outside of my purview, that's really not related to my job. I would have a hard time justifying that. So,
You did Spongy Moss. Don't tell me about it.
But we know Spongy Moss clearly fall under the auspice of the deputy county administrator. So, but they wouldn't fall under, say, the assistant director of transportation. So as you can see, that what they're trying to do is draw that distinction to make it should be tied to somebody's job or somebody's office or something specific. And I think that makes sense. And also, too, they want to
Scott, is the $75 by state statute?
That's
That
actually
ought to be adjusted for inflation. It's been $75 for 20 years.
so I'll
20 years
It's
ago.
not really a deterrent or a true penalty.
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah. I'll confirm, I believe the state statute, I believe it's still a $75, but let's confirm it.
I just think,
Yeah.
I can't remember a time when somebody's bought me a $75 meal, but it's not beyond my, thinking that I could go out to dinner and spend $75. That's not a lot of money in a lot of places. And I at the same time, to think that someone's gonna do their job differently here because somebody bought them a $75 meal in a day, and you're talking about a whole day's worth of food on this regulation, that's pretty silly.
Well, right, but the whole point is, not that you shouldn't eat, but should a vendor or prohibited source be providing that food? What the intent is to put that cap on what they can provide to you as a gift. If you want to order the $100 steak, you certainly can.
But it's okay. When
Does
we're a
it mirror what the
candidate,
state statute currently is? I think his is $75
Yeah,
right now.
I believe so, but I want to.
So that's what it is. I was just looking, it hasn't changed, and we're just mirroring what they do, that's all.
that's fine.
Yeah, and that was my hunch going into it, but I want to be 100% certain, so we'll confirm them. But here was a loophole in this. So a prohibited source could take somebody out to dinner every single day, 365 days of the year, at $75 per meal. And so eventually you can see that would really add up, and that could maybe cause some influence. So the Ethics Commission said, let's stop that. And, you may go out with a vendor, and it's, not uncommon in the business world that this happens, right? And I think the state legislature recognized that early on, and the Ethics Ordinance recognizes that. But the Ethics Commission said, but there should be a cap. So $75 per day, that remains the same. But not to exceed $500 per person in any 12-month period, to really stop that stringing of, maybe a potential benefit or, attempt to influence over a long period of time. So you figure $500 that covers a few meals, but that's not taking somebody out every single day, 365 days out of the year, which under the Ethics Ordinance as it's presented or as it reads today could happen. Not to say it would, but I'm saying it could. So the intent is to really put a limitation on that as well, in addition to 75, cap it at 500, which they felt was a reasonable amount. If you think that's, equivalent of 4, like 5 times a year, as it amounts to. So, any questions on anything we talked about so far? All right. So moving forward under the ethics advisor and training. Just want to touch upon when I mentioned folding in the candidate into the ethics ordinance. Under the Gift Ban Act, you see another reference to the candidate. So just once again, to keep that playing field level. So moving on to, nothing changed under prohibition on sexual harassment. And when this was added in, I want to say, a few years ago by the county, to mirror the state statute, because the state statute changed, we had to follow suit. So this amendment was included to mirror that. And then this was drafted to really align not only with what the state statute required, but also with what the county's policy is. So you have that, try to stay as much in alignment with the county as possible. Moving to the ethics advisor and training. So the ethics advisor right now is your director of HR. The ethics advisor serves in the capacity if somebody has a question about the ethics ordinance, or if something is going to happen and they say, this vendor wants to take me out to dinner, I don't know, can I go? They can consult with the HR director. The HR director can read this and say, so here's the limitation. You can go $75 per day. You can't take home a doggy bag. You have to eat it on site and all the limitations. So the ethics advisor, I'm putting out for information, it's a director of HR. And in the absence of a director of HR, it becomes the county administrator. Why is it not the deputy county administrator? Because this position serves as a liaison to the ethics commission, and we try to keep that separation between the two. So, but what the ethics commission did many years ago, and in one of the revisit, was including a training requirement. And as you know, with any good HR policy, you have to have training. And you can't hold somebody accountable to a policy if you didn't provide them training. So years ago, a training component was incorporated, and you've all taken the ethics training, right? And I'm sure if you want to take it again, we can make that happen. But the Ethics Commission said, well, if you took it 10 years ago, and now we've amended the ethics ordinance several times since then, the employee took it 10 years ago and only had to take it once, does not know about any of the updates, including, these updates that are presented to you. So they said, what should happen now is, if there's an amendment to the ethics ordinance, it should invoke that training requirement again for everybody. We do it computer-based. There's different ways we can be efficient, but after 6 months after an amendment, all employees should be trained. And it can be very simple to say, hey, the ethics ordinance was amended, and here's the new amendment. As long as you have that out there. And we use a platform called Power DMS, which is a computer-based training. It's very simple, it tracks the training, ensures everybody does it. So 6 months after an amendment, and no less than every 2 years thereafter, people will go through the full training. Really the intent is, ethics is important, and people need to be aware and mindful of this ethics ordinance and not forget over the years. So they're recommending increase in frequency and regular training. John?
So if candidates are a part of this now, are they subject to this C?
The training requirement?
Yeah.
So that's a great question. Right now it reads all employees, officers subject to this ordinance. By that paragraph, it does not cover candidates.
The candidates are subject to the
The
ordinance.
candidates are subject to the ordinance.
So you'd almost have to hand that out as part of an election packet included in it, like the loyalty statement and those things, and explain that you're subject to this, but you're not requiring anybody to take this unless they've been duly elected.
Right, and the challenge is, because it's computer-based training, you have to have a county sign-on and you have to have a county account. Candidates do not have that.
So then you may have to put an exception in the C for candidates, like saying candidates are not.
I don't know how you train a candidate. We don't have candidate training at this point in time.
Yeah.
But you can give them the packet and say, be careful where you accept gifts from. I mean.
Yeah, right, I don't know if you can enforce that.
Well, and it's not listed in the series of those required to take the training.
No, I know, I'm just saying, but you say subject to this ordinance, I'll leave it to the attorneys in the room. They're subject to the ordinance, so.
I think you just have to, I would recommend to the ethics committee that at their next meeting, they discuss how to hand that over to a candidate and explain to them that they're subject to this ordinance. And whether that's to give them a little brief cheat sheet, and then also tell them who they can talk to if they have any questions, like you do to elected officials. But I think that would be important, but I agree with my colleague to my right, that I don't think we could enforce it.
No, I don't think
But I would think that you have to provide some type of guidance or direction to a candidate if you're gonna tell them they're subject to this and they could receive a violation notice.
Well, and you've got to distinguish the difference between, you know, you're a candidate, you're probably raising money. You've got a whole bunch of stuff to report in Springfield. You're doing all those things.
Right.
You know, I suppose that somebody taking you out for dinner would make a difference in your candidacy, but I can't think of how. I mean, you're raising $10,000 to do this, and now you're, you know, violating an ordinance over lunch.
So the dinner doesn't apply to the candidates. There's only specific areas of this ethics ordinance that would apply to level that playing field. So some of those internal controls, really that doesn't apply to the candidates. More really as it relates to the election, and then they're in the exceptions. One of the things to keep in mind, so as an incumbent running for office, you're very limited what you can do on the county property, right? Because the ethics ordinance says you can't use the public resources for political. But somebody who's not an incumbent or, you know, part of the county can come and, what if they're campaigning and talking, come to this meeting, and there's a lot of things that can happen, and the intent is, you know, they should not have any greater ability to campaign on county property than an incumbent. So those are some of the controls that we were trying to put in place to really level that playing field.
There's already a state statute regulating that.
Well,
Somebody should look, or have the state attorneys look at it. I don't think candidates are allowed to go up and down the courthouse down there and pass petitions out. I mean, you know, but I think that's a state statute. I don't think that's in with our ethics ordinance.
Well, you can't do that on
You
any
can't
government
campaign
property.
on
It's
government
any
property,
government
period.
property. Yay, am I wrong?
You're right.
Yeah.
You know, so I know that, you know, I mean, passing your petition for office, it'd be great to be able to sit over there when, you know, go through courtrooms and do all that stuff. You'd get a lot of signatures really fast. You'd also be violating the law. So, I mean, forget our ethics ordinance. The state's attorney's office is gonna be hauling you in. So, anyway, okay.
But that was one example, and I'm sure that there could be a multitude of other examples too, where that playing field is not level, and the intent is to level that playing field. Okay. So now we talked about training, and one of the things that, so when the Ethics Commission, one of the concerns that has come up time and time again, both at the county board level, but also too on the Ethics Commission level, is really the term of office. It used to be 2 years, and then it was amended to 3 years. And the intent is, the ethics ordinance is pretty complicated. There's a lot that goes into it, and it takes a while for somebody getting appointed to the Ethics Commission, brand new, to really bring up to speed on what the ordinance is, what it does, what it prohibits, and then the process and procedures in the event that there's an ethics complaint filed. That's a long, drawn-out process, and we go through a pretty robust training, and we try to get our commissioners well-schooled in how to handle different situations and look at different aspects of the ethics ordinance. But after 3 years, you know, they're pretty much there, and then their term's over, and they may or may not get reappointed. So one of the recommendations from the Ethics Commission was to be appointed for a 5-year term. And what this will do is give them a lot more time to learn the ethics ordinance, be schooled in how to implement it, and then be seasoned enough that in the event a complaint gets filed, they'll be able to come through. The parallel was drawn with your ZBA. The ZBA members serve for an extended period of time. Once again, because of the esoteric nature of a zoning board or a zoning ordinance, it takes a lot of time to ramp up. So Ethics Commission recommending changing it from 3 years to 5 years.
That wouldn't extend any current terms, correct?
So when we did from 2 years to 3 years, it did change those in term.
In this, would it?
Right now, it's contemplated that it would, but that's something to be discussed. How would you want to handle that?
So I think you'd be better off staggering terms.
Oh, God, yes.
I mean, you don't want to have 5 people changing the time or whatever you want to change. I would much rather see staggered terms than just extended terms, because you run into the same problem. So now you change 5 people at the same time. That makes no sense.
So, yeah, with 3 years, it is still staggered, but when you add 5, you're going to.
I know you're going to have different numbers in different years.
Right.
I get that, because you don't have any, you know, but I would still stagger it. I don't want to see the whole board go up at one time.
And that wouldn't be the case. If you tack on 2 more years to every current term, you'll still have a staggering, but, I mean, they're still going to be grouped. They're going to, within a 3-year period, there's going to be new terms that are up. So
5 years is also a long time to be doing this.
No.
It just is. It's a long time.
So that's one of the important discussion points for tonight, or for this morning.
I know, I would just suggest to maybe make the chairman a 5-year term. You could leave everybody else at 3, still staggered, but you could make the chairman 5 years so that you have some consistency in leadership. And then it's an option for people to consider. But then you wouldn't have that, as you said, long-term 5-year commitment for everybody. But if you're going to be the leader and you're going to hold the chairmanship position, you should know that it would be for 5 years. And then that might promote consistency, et cetera.
Good. However, the Ethics Commission is recommending that the chair be selected every 2 years. In the next paragraph under Ethics Ordinance, it was really undetermined of how the Ethics Chair was elected, so, or selected, I should say. It's from their membership, and, you know, we've had the benefit of having consistency among the chair, and the current chair, I think, is on their second term as chair. But the intent is, like, when does it end? It wasn't described on how that selection process takes place and when. So the Ethics Commission is recommending that at their first meeting in odd number years, so in essence every 2 years, they would elect or select a chair. It could be the same chair, or it could be somebody different, or if the chair doesn't want to do it anymore. So that's what they wanted to do.
I'm sorry, I was looking for
I know.
where.
So I'm
who's
assuming,
chair.
Terry, you're our liaison to the Ethics Commission, correct? I would ask that maybe when this goes forward to the Committee of the Whole, we bring that forward and you can explain why the commission made the recommendations that they did, and then say, at Administrative Services, the conversation was, rather than perhaps extending everyone to 5, you wanted to elect a chairman every 2, maybe that position should be a 5-year. I think changing leadership of something that is that intense and complicated and difficult is probably not in the best interest of those people appearing before the Ethics Commission. You want someone who really understands what they've been doing and has a long history of regulating the ordinance. So, but that can be a broader conversation with the full board. I mean, I'll always go with what the majority is, but.
But if I may, in having been a member of the Ethics Commission prior to my time with the county, I'll tell you, it's not just the chair that you want that consistency. Your members, it's really important that your members know how this goes. And one of the things we want to point out too is the recommendation is to change the ordinance to include a vice chair, because there's no vice chair. And there's we can talk about specifically why that's important, because in the event that the chair is not available, you need to have somebody who is going to be able to run the commission. One of the important tools that was incorporated in the last major revision of the ethics ordinance was a process called sua sponte dismissal, which means that if ethics ordinance or ethics complaints filed and it's against somebody who doesn't have jurisdiction under the ordinance or whatever, the chair now has the authority, based on certain criteria, that they can dismiss that complaint immediately without taking it to the commission. Prior to that, any frivolous complaint still had to go through the commission, which is a public meeting, which got the splash in the headlines, and the ordinance was really weaponized, as you can imagine. So the sua sponte dismissal was put in place, give the chair the authority to say, this isn't a violation of the ethics ordinance, and there's a process that they can go through, but they have that authority at the initial filing of the complaint. In the event that the chair isn't around and we get a complaint, the addition of a vice chair and then the empowerment of the vice chair to have that sua sponte dismissal power, I think becomes really important and really relevant, because that tool then stays preserved. So we have a chair, and now the substantial recommendations, including a vice chair, into this process for those reasons.
And my last statement, I'm going to shut up. With all of these, and I have an opportunity to be on my soapbox, so I will. In all of these, I find it somewhat disconcerting that we have a huge interested population of individuals who wish to volunteer and serve on our committees, on our task forces, on our commissions, whatever, on our public bodies. I find it disconcerting when we don't allow that to happen. I get people should serve a couple terms or, commit to something. But I also want to see our community is growing. I want to see those new people who have skill sets and opportunities to bring them and feel part of our community and not necessarily rotate the same people over and over and over again. So again, I'm just saying, I get the 5-year idea, I do, and I'm going to make a bigger deal out of it. But I think 3 years is a lot for people. And how often has our Ethics Commission met? So even if which is not often.
For a hearing.
Huh?
For a hearing. They meet to do other things, but how often do they meet
For a hearing?
hearings?
Yeah, not frequently. So it's,
Much more frequently in the last, I'd say 3 years ago. Sorry,
Yes, go ahead, you got the floor.
but 3 years ago, twice a year.
Yeah.
Now, 5 or 6 times a year.
Yeah, we were typically meeting, 2 to 3 times a year. We would do training when there's really nothing. But over the past year, they've met, and I can count how many times, but it was many, many times to review the ethics ordinance. And they did a deep dive, as you can see with these recommendations. So it was very frequent, but this past year was an anomaly because specifically they were looking at the ethics ordinance. Aside from that, it's typically 2 to 3 times per year, really for training or for maybe changing their operating policies. But they do meet, and the intent is that to keep them active and keep them engaged, because in the event that a complaint is filed, and we never know when that's going to happen, they have to be ready to roll, to be ready to go. So one of the things to point out, the recommendation of 5 years is their recommendation. This is your ordinance. And if, to keep it, that is really your prerogative on what you want to do. And once again, that's why we have this discussion. And, because they made a recommendation doesn't mean you need to accept that recommendation. You have other things that you have to consider when you look at these changes. But this is the county's ordinance, this is your ordinance, and you have that ability to say, we appreciate the recommendation, but you want to keep it as is. You have that ability. Just want to be clear about that.
Terry had her hand up first, if you still.
Thank you. I think that this particular group on the commission is very well qualified. And so they looked at this from a different perspective than has probably been reviewed because of their ability. And so once this is in place, I think that probably 2 to 3 years would be what they would go back to. There's never been an ethics complaint brought forward, so that's great. But them being forward-thinking and what happens if this, I'm trying to outthink. Now, one of the things that has come up in the discussion this morning is that they might be stepping into areas that are already covered by state election law that really don't need to be covered under the commission. And we might need to go back to that and pull that out if it's redundant. I don't know.
Well, and there was one example of the level playing field, and if it's a bad example, then I withdraw.
There was something
Before
that
we would change
literally-
this, we would send this to the state's attorney's office with that question anyway.
Let's
No
think-
matter what the recommendation is, I'd still want it reviewed by the state's attorney's office before we found out that we were, outside our playing field.
Yeah, but once again, to be clear, that was an example. That wasn't.
There was something specific that arose that was used as an example that brought this up. And then it was, well, okay, this could be pursued with a current office holder, but what about people running for, as a candidate? So, but one of the things that I noticed in the first 2 years is that you were losing a lot of intellectual property with people who maybe met maybe 6 to 8 times and their term was up. And so that would be something to be considered. It's not like other commissions, and hopefully we won't give them cause to.
You don't really want 6 or 8 meetings hearings a month, that's true.
Right. That's fair. One of the things too, and I think the point's well taken about is kind of change over a different perspective. the commission is appointed, the recommendation for appointment is with the Administrative Services Committee, and then it's sent to the county board. So you have the ability to bring other candidates forward. I mean, that really falls within your purview.
John was first.
Go ahead, John.
No, well, I was just on the 5-year term thing. I think that, one, people know they're going to be appointed for 5 years. So it's something that they're committing to. Hopefully they understand that. With ZBA as an example, 5 years, we all run for 4 years, so we're committing to 4 years. So I'm not sure that is necessarily, a problem for people. And with 5 members, you have the potential to have a new member every year during that 5-year term. So you can't have new blood coming in, and there's the possibility of limiting people to no more than 2 terms, on the commission. If you want to really make sure that you get regular type of turnovers, you can take those steps as well to make that happen. But not knowing a whole lot about the Ethics Commission, quite honestly, but the idea of what I've been hearing today and how much knowledge they have to have, and I read through this and I was kind of scratching my head at half the stuff. It would seem that having those years of experience would be very fair to anybody who had to come in front of the Ethics Commission, instead of having somebody that's only been there a year or 2 years. And with only 5 members, it doesn't, the vote can swing pretty easily without that knowledge base. So those are my comments.
Well,
Well, it'll be opposite of what John said is, and kind of what Pam's saying is, like the Conservation District, they do a 5-year term, but then you have to at least leave for 1 year and reapply. And that would possibly bring new folks in. And I don't know if there was a clause in this like that.
Right now, it says commissioners may be reappointed to serve subsequent terms, which means they can be reappointed again and again and again. But that's your ordinance. I mean, that's.
It's not a sword I'm dying on, whatever.
Yeah.
well, and the
Whatever
difference
the majority
is
wants,
that
I'm good.
the Conservation
recommends,
District
just
is
leave
set
it
by
alone.
state statute. That's
Okay.
why that's why you have to be off in between. It's the state statute issue. It has nothing to do with. It wasn't. And in fact, actually, the Conservation is just even stranger. You can't serve any other office while you're in there. They made me resign from precinct committee in order to be a Conservation District board member.
So, interesting on that note, and for those who may have been in PED yesterday or saw PED, the one gentleman that was here, Lloyd Everard, for the Conservation District, actually was the former chair of the Ethics Commission when he was appointed to the Conservation District, resigned from the Ethics Commission to take on that post specifically for
Because
that
of that
reason.
state statute. I mean, it seemed pretty silly to me, but that's the way it was.
Wow.
So and that's something, once again, this is why we have this discussion. When it comes into terms, whatever you feel is appropriate is going to best serve the county and the administration of this ordinance, that's up to you. So their recommendation is 3. You can stay at 3, you can go to 4, we can do 5. But I think I'd like to get a little, after the presentation, maybe a little bit more discussion or clarity, or give me back some direction and talk to the committee about it. But I think it's something that obviously we need to further deliberate on, what that term would be. So let me just continue going on. There's a few more points I want to make. We did talk about the addition of a vice chair. I explained, why the commission felt that was very important, and in the administration of this ordinance, how important it would be in the absence of a chair. So that is recommended, and once again, it would have the authorities of the chair when the chair is not available or incapacitated. So then moving down a little bit further, we're getting towards the end here. Under the penalties clause, or under the powers and duties of the commission, there's a lot of discussion on we're going to refer to like false and frivolous claims. We do have a penalty provision for false and frivolous claims, but there was no process in determining whether a complaint was false or frivolous. Like, who would make that? How would that process work? Because when you think of the ethics ordinance and how it could be weaponized, and that was a real concern with the previous amendments to the ethics ordinance, was to stop that. That was one of the shortcomings, is it contemplated false and frivolous claims. In other words, that somebody can file a complaint against me that has no merit whatsoever, just for the sake of making my life, difficult and having to go through the process and the public splash. It was really undetermined how that would work. So the Ethics Commission said, we need to clean that up, and we need to put into the ethics ordinance a process that ties back to that penalty of false or frivolous claims. We know they're bad and they could happen, but how do we determine that one is filed? So under the powers and duties of the Ethics Commission, they added a paragraph specifically to empower the Ethics Commission themselves to conduct a hearing to determine whether or not a false or frivolous complaint was filed or somebody intentionally obstructed or interfered with the investigation. So this, I think, adds that procedural step to bring forward and adjudicate a false or frivolous claim if one is to be determined. So, and then moving into penalties, once on that note, it really cleaned up the language and ties it to false and frivolous complaints. There was terms like bad faith allegations, and based on a legal review, we did have a state's attorney at the table with the commission assisting with these changes, and we will do a full legal review again, but providing guidance, and that was one of the changes, is to really clean up the penalties for false and frivolous complaints. That coupled with that power of the Ethics Commission, really think solidifies that process in the event there is a false or frivolous complaint filed. So with that, I do want to provide another example under the level playing field and prohibited political activity, because the one I provided obviously was bad under the state law, but keep in mind, maybe you can be, you can be prosecuted under both. Under prohibited political activity, if you have an elected official who's serving in their office and they're running for re-election and they tell one of their staffers, hey, I've got this campaign event on Saturday, I want you there, and if you're not there, that could impact your job. Under this ordinance, that's a violation. So that employee can say, look, I'm being forced to engage in prohibited political activity, and my job's at stake if I don't. So clearly there's protection for the employee in that scenario. That makes sense. But let's say it's coming in, and let's say there's not a candidate, or the incumbent's running, but there's an opponent. The opponent has a lot of traction, and the opponent tells that staffer, hey, it's pretty likely I'm going to win this election, and therefore you should be in my good graces and help me out, because when I'm in office, I can do all these things for you. I can promise you this or that. Because they're a candidate and not already under this ordinance, there's no protection for that employee. That employee, what are they going to do? Now they're put in this precarious situation to say, well, if they win, either I go along and give up my Saturday and campaign, and if they win, I'm in good graces. If they don't win, or if I don't do it and they win, I can lose the job. That's not fair to the employee. So once again, leveling the playing field. The candidate, the outsider, we'll call it, can do that, and there's no protection for the employee. But the incumbent can't do that clearly, because that's a violation of this ordinance. So now you can see that disconnect. The intent is, shouldn't the candidate also be subject and the employees be protected from those kind of scenarios? And that's when I talk about leveling the playing field. That's what the Ethics Commission was contemplating too, those types of situations. Is that I think, a better example then?
I doubt whether it happens very often.
It
could.
Yeah.
It's not important.
But could it? And therefore, if it could, there's protections.
How do you enforce it?
Well, you force it because it's an enforceable ordinance.
No, I understand, but that same employee who's trying to dance on the head of a pin already is the only guy coming forward or gal coming forward. You want to put your job at risk? Yeah, that's going to do it.
Well,
That's how you get unions.
Yeah, well, you have whistleblower protections. There's other things that will affect it.
I understand.
And-
I get that. It's just, it's giving the employer the job, the employee, the prospect of I can either go to a political event and blow my Saturday, or I can be a whistleblower against my boss. Is not a real good choice.
But they're not the only ones that can file an ethics violation complaint.
I understand, but they're the only
Could be a
ones
third
with
party that
knowledge
can
of
file
it.
it too.
They're the only ones with knowledge of it.
What if somebody overheard that conversation? And
Yeah.
so, but the intent is really to put something in place to protect, whether or not, we hope it never happens. We hope none of this ever happens. We hope that the Ethics Commission never has a complaint. That would be ideal. But in the event of, it is, I think,
I
one
don't
of those.
mind trying to protect employees from this. I just think that you're putting those employees in even worse positions than they were with deciding whether to go to a campaign event.
It's not dissimilar, if it makes anybody feel better, it's not really dissimilar than any of the state statutes require of candidates. I get it, I mean, I'm not, but it's not dissimilar from what's expected from the next level candidates, so I get it.
Fine.
All right. That wraps up some of the key areas I wanted to highlight. Certainly, I think that there's sounds like a lot more discussion on the term, and then maybe even more about incorporation of candidates or some mechanism for training, which we can go back to the Ethics Commission and find out how they would want to handle that.
My preference would be to send it to the state's attorney's office to make certain we're not outside of our parameters. And if we're not, then I'm fine with having it go forward. But I would want that information before you send it back and have them churn through it again and find out, oh, guess what, you can't do this anyway. That would be my only step. I would think it would be worthwhile that way. Go ahead, Pam.
And I'll take whatever, I mean, seriously, I'll take the recommendation of the Ethics Commission, whatever they choose to say is what they think is best with regard to term limitations. The only thing I would ask is if you and Terry take back a discussion on how to get this information to potential candidates that they're subject to this, whatever that would look like. You know, signing a document that says that they've received it and they understand something. I would just ask that they kind of flesh that out a little bit more, please.
Completely fair. And
Yeah,
so,
it's in their hands. Let them.
I know that the meeting had been pushed out. Do you know when the meeting is supposed to, has it been rescheduled yet?
It has not.
Okay. This does not have to go to the committee of the whole at this point, right?
Next month.
In July or June?
Well, it's.
I think you gotta send it off
Right.
for the check before you do anything.
Because I'd like to see it go back. There have been some really good questions raised.
Yeah.
And one of mine is, let's not be redundant for things that are already covered by state statute unless there's a reason to handle it local because of the time it would take to be addressed by the state. And I think we've got the expertise and background for people to know how to look at that and then have it go to the state's attorney and then really have it fine-tuned so that we're not, cluttering up.
Yeah, there are, this is based off of the state statute that requires municipalities and local governments to incorporate an ethics ordinance. So there are provisions specifically with Gift Ban Act, prohibit political activity, and now with sexual harassment in the state statute that requires this to exist. So, and there may be, some parallels among that state statute with other ones, but we're beholden to that particular state statute. I don't have the reference in front of me, but point taken. So we will be convening the Ethics Commission again for, obviously we got additional items to talk about.
Get the state's attorney's office opinion. If their opinion says everything's fine, I don't, then fine, talk to them about is there any last minute changes they want to make. But it depends what the state's attorney's office has to say. They might turn around and say, this part's no good, you can't do it. Okay, well then, or they may say this is perfect, it's great. I don't know. I'm just, let's get their opinion, get it back to the commission, make certain they're on the same page, and they have a recommendation to us from there. I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
So good next step. And if that's a direction of the commission, we will or the committee, we will happily take it back to the state's attorney, let them review it as a whole, because once again, this was developed over the course of a year of reviewing it different, and I think just to have that comprehensive overview, and then we'll report back. All right.
Thank you.
Are you staying for the next part, or do we have somebody else in the hot seat?
Peter has passed the torch. It's him.
I didn't bring my agenda, and of course
It's a 30-day review process of your budget.
It's the next three discussions.
You studied this one in depth.
And I need this. Okay. All right. So, and when we were developing this agenda and talking with Chair Gaudemeller, there were some questions that came up from the committee that we wanted to put on here and really talk about. And really things that refer back to the board rules. As you know, the Administrative Services Committee has purview over the board rules. About every 2 years, usually the first part of the second year, you dive into the board rules and take a look at it. But because of some questions that came up, there was Chair Gaudemeller said, let's put these on the agenda and let's talk about them. And so everybody's aware. And then included in the packet was three things. Two, there were excerpts of the board rules, and one was a state statute as it relates to the budget perspective. Thank you. Actually, I can probably even pull that up. Chair, I'm not sure if you want me to kind of lead into it, or you wanted to take it.
We can talk about whichever way you want to do is fine.
Okay, so
Terry raised these questions last time. I wanted to make sure we got them being addressed. They're not in any, I don't remember the order you put them in, but they put this one in as a 30-day review first. And it was about what actions could be taken in October when you do the budget. Wait a second. If you're basically stuck with state statute, you have to have 15 days under a budget, not 30, but you still have to have 15 days. So at some point in time, the budget has to be put up for review, and then you can come back and do that. If the board, if someone wants to make those motions in October, that budget has to be there beforehand. And right now, we've designed this program to not be there then. You're still going to have a presentation. There's going to be a time when the board has on their agenda, it's set for review. You don't get to make motions during that set for review. You have to let it sit there, the public comment on it, and then you come back. If you want to call a special meeting and try to do it earlier, what we did find is that under the state statute, you can do it at day 15 or 16, depending on how you do the counting. But you can't do it at the meeting that you do it for the review, or for the opening for public review.
If we look at it as a whole, on the entire budget process, that like right now, if I ask the board, where are we to budget, actual to budgets, the budget that started in December.
You mean at what we spent? Or you mean
Right.
like where we're at on the process for the next budget?
Yes and yes.
Okay.
Because they are one, okay? So, I mean, any business would be looking at their budgets on a monthly basis. And we don't. We don't in our finance committee, and we don't in our, in any of our committee, in our board. So no one's aware of that. So this has been our experience for 2 years, and now we're going into the third year for me. I don't know what it was prior. And so we say that we're going to change it, and yet we haven't. And then it starts a discussion. I mean, I remember the first year we would start having presentations in the summer with departments coming and presenting what they wanted and how they wanted to spend more money, not how they could save or cut or what any context. Which of course, ask me how I want to, what I want to do. I've got lots of ideas on how I want to spend money. And so then it would come in a budget format, and where people are trying to, where is this on the website, how do we find this? And maybe they've got 8 weeks, maybe, if they understand it functionally for 8 weeks, and now we've got a budget in October, and people are still not understanding, you know, what is going on. And so here we are again, and so.
But we do stuff in March, we do stuff early on, when we talk about
We've
what
done
our
stuff
goals
here,
are.
we've done anything since December? I'm on finance and admin, I haven't seen anything.
We had.
Am I alone?
Tomorrow, the finance committee will be looking at the budget development policy for 26.
Okay, but are we looking at actuals to budget?
We can look at whatever you want, and I think I think Carrie's always available to talk about how you want.
We can look at whatever we want. So my statement is that we don't look at actuals to budget. We haven't looked at actuals to budget.
Well,
So I want to hear what Pam has to say.
It's just a question. Is there an issue with bringing forward, and I would say to both administrative services and finance, every quarter, if that's too much, tell me, I'm throwing, if every 6 months or at a stated period of time that does that? I mean, I do it for every not-for-profit board I've ever been on, where we can see, and Carrie, you know, you're brilliant, unless you tell me that there's a reason not to do that. At the end of every month, you run what we've spent and what we budgeted to spend, and this is where I'm asking, with a zillion comments about why, you know, it's only 22% when we're halfway through the year, you know, because the payments don't come in until this. So I'm asking, is there a procedural obstacle to being able to provide that kind of information in a department or, you know, in general operating?
It's there every day.
Well, we've been presenting quarterly, but I think the challenge for us is what level of detail do you want to see? Because we started with a lot of detail and maybe that was too much, so then we kind of.
I'm gonna tell you it was way too much.
So then we kind of skinnied it down, and maybe we skinnied it down too much, because then we're just looking at major revenues and then general fund by the operating levels. So if you want to kind of expand on, maybe we look at major revenue and then general fund in certain departments that are spending higher, or would that be easier?
I don't know. Terry, what is it? And can we formally incorporate this into our agendas at finance and administrative services?
Your question for finance, and we can have it tomorrow. Carrie and I are meeting with Chairman Scala after Finance Committee tomorrow to talk about how we're going to design the calendar for June meeting.
And I don't care if administrative services does it. I mean, I'm perfectly, I love finance. I'm not on it. So I'm perfectly happy just to leave it at a finance meeting, but to have regular reviews of whatever it is on a quarterly basis, that maybe even Michael at a committee of the whole can say, we just reviewed the quarterly and we're at this, whatever this is. You know, we didn't receive federal dollars, we are gonna receive whatever.
well, that covers annual budget. We were actually on 30-day review.
I know, sorry.
But my whole thing is, this has led up to the.
Then you wouldn't need the 30 days.
Yeah, if we had time, if people were aware of what was going on, and we're going into October with the budget that they understood, and we're in agreement on it, we would be presenting something for 30-day review that everybody was.
Well, but I mean, the purpose, the question was, can you make amendments in October? At some point in time, it has to be laid open for review by the public. You can't make the motion during that same meeting. You gotta make it afterwards. So sometime it has to be presented. If you wanna present it in September and vote in October, if you wanna present in October and vote in November, you can't do both at the same meeting.
And I would say, I'm not speaking for you, but I'm speaking at you.
Okay, that's fine.
I would say that that's less of a question about amending that 30 days if we've had regular, and maybe we should do it both administrative services and finance, because that's a bigger swath of the board. But if we had regular reviews of where we are in the spending and then comments about, again, we do that at senior services all the time. I constantly am updating, and there's unusual circumstances to these two entities, and we're never gonna see their spending to the end of the year. Now people know. But I don't wanna burden, I mean, my other.
Transportation's an example of it. You do your construction in the middle of the summer, you pay it out in September.
But that's a
You don't-
learning experience that Carrie and Peter, I would think, would bring forward and say, yeah, that's why you only see 12%. You're gonna see 90% in July, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think that is an educational experience. But again, I don't wanna burden you any more, I'm serious, than you already are. So I guess I would say we've gone from way too detailed to way too simple, and maybe there's something in between. And maybe with the chairman of finance, you guys can figure out what that is. And it's a beginning. It would help us know where we are and how things are working and where the expenditures are, so that when we do have a budget discussion, it's with information in people's hands that they can make viable decisions about what makes sense and what doesn't make sense when people are presenting their budgets. Maybe better questions asked. Information is power.
Was it in the finance committee, or was it, but it was a couple of months ago, where we hashed through, it was an issue, oh my gosh, it was with Brian and Eric, it must have been finance. And, but it was such a great, open conversation. And that's the way that this should be, where we have information that comes out. So, for example, I truly regret being late today because the mental health board, the staff asking for extra pay to cover administrative responsibilities because we don't have a director right now. No, I hope that I've got to go back and look through, but there'll
There'll be more discussion in the whole.
Okay, yeah.
You voted no for it, don't worry.
Thank you. That was out of line.
We covered it.
But,
We didn't
things that are going on, I mean, for example, Bureau of Labor Statistics just came out with a 5-year review in the state of Illinois. We have a net gain of private sector jobs of 500. That's not 500 something, that's of the entire state, 500 jobs, but 12,000 public sector jobs. So I've emailed to Jake and Jeff, what was it McHenry County? How did it break down? How are we doing? Are we creating more private sector job than hopefully public sector job? Because that's what I want to know. I don't want, when we're looking at our budget, I don't want this to just keep growing. And are we coming up with ideas on generating revenue? These are the types of things that I think that this board has the responsibility and the intellectual capacity to do. But we learn these things when we're looking at budgets. And again, I agree with Pam, not to be tedious and to be a burden, but that's kind of hard to do September and October. Boom, now we're going to discuss it in November and vote. And people can't comprehend what the conversation is because they just don't have that kind of background overall, for 18 people, and you're trying to convey it. And yeah, I guess we have to call special meetings in November when it's been posted for 15 days. Is that what you're saying?
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead. Well, I don't,
Yeah.
I don't know if I agree with, assuming you're basing it on the 55 ILCS 56-1001, I don't even know if I agree with your interpretation of it. It says, shall be made conveniently available to public inspection and provided to the public at a public meeting at least 15 days prior to final action thereon, except nothing in this act shall restrict a county board or board of county commissioners from acting at a public meeting to amend a budget after making that budget available to the public and prior to final adoption. So I don't know if I agree with.
The interpretation is, and I'll speak for these guys, that after it's presented, it can be amended.
Which would be?
And we do that,
Yeah.
right? We always amend the budget.
No, of course.
Between October and November.
But
it has to be presented. Your ordinance says it is presented by county administration.
Right.
And we present it after we get a recommendation from finance.
Right, but the presentation of it would be at that first meeting. That's what I'm saying. So if
And it's at the meeting in I mean, what we've done traditionally is at the meeting in October, we present it. But you don't get to amend it during the presentation. You've got to let it sit for whatever.
But
30
you,
days.
I guess what I'm saying is, I think you can. I mean, ultimately, it says after it's presented, before final action, which we vote to, deny it or whatever, amending isn't a final action. And, I mean, we'd be within the time frame. They present it on the day, it gets amended by definition after, and then final action happens a month, at the next month's meeting.
We change it, we
There
need-
isn't I think, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, we change that process, McHenry County will be substantially different than the rest of the state and how they do it. Just noting. Interpretation.
Well, here's the question, oh, sorry.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. The question that's come up is, if changes, amendments are made in the November meeting, then does it have to be reposted for 30 days?
No, that's what he's reading, that's exactly that point. That you can amend it then, because that's what you've put it open for the public to comment on and tell us what they want to change or what they disagree with. And then you can have the amendments at that final voting. But you have to, at some point in time, say, here's our budget, public look at it.
Right.
And then you can approve it after that, or you can amend it after that. But at some point in time, it has to be open for the public to review. Sure.
So the reality is that it's very difficult to have a conversation as a committee in that November meeting, and that once it's been posted for 15 days, it says 15 days?
Yeah, we always refer to it, our ordinance is 30, because most of them have 30, but the budget actually, the statute says you can do it in 15.
Then we need to have a special meeting at 15 days in November to have a discussion, rather than us all talking one-on-one to avoid the Open Meetings Act conflict, because it's too much to discuss in the committee of the whole and then the meeting. There's just too much. And that would even give us more time to get more information to make better decisions. Because somehow we need to it's like a done deal. It's just
Well, that's
like.
why we have the meeting in September that we go over the budget, so that people have that opportunity as a board to figure out, here's what's coming.
I mean, alternatively, we could just post the budget. I mean, I'm not gonna go on about my interpretation, but alternatively, couldn't administration it just said, all it says is you have to make it conveniently available to public inspection. Can't we just do that 15 days before the October meeting? And then there's no issue whether I'm right or Joe's right on our interpretation of
It
it.
has to be at a public meeting, though.
Yeah.
So
Why?
15 days at a public meeting.
Where does it say?
If-
Provided to the public,
Could-
oh,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah, you got it.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Yep, you're right.
Get the final recommendation from finance in October.
All right, never mind, scratch that idea.
And again, there comes a point in time too where a discussion has to be with people who do understand. Again, if you're a member of the board and you need further information, you gotta do your homework at some point. It's not always done in a meeting. And we are a committee organization, right? You're on finance because that's your skill set. If you're not, and you don't do your own homework, you've heard me say this, then you pay attention to what the committee does and the conversation from that committee. They're available, do it. And there comes a point in time where I keep doing this. You don't learn because you went to a meeting and you had 16 different other opinions. You gotta do your own homework and bring that, right?
Right.
And so I don't know, just commenting on a special meeting, I don't know if that does anything. You either understand or you don't, and if you don't, then you better learn. That's your responsibility as a member, right? Or you pay attention to what somebody else does that you trust and you just do whatever they do, which members have done. But again, I think that I concur. I think that we need to do a better job of presenting information about where the budget is and what's happening along the way, so that when individual departments come in front of us and they present their next year's budget, we ask important and educated questions. But I just don't think that we need to have more meetings to have further discussion. I mean, the opportunities are there. They truly are there.
Okay, we'll see.
Well, I would hope that there will be further discussion about how we present, and work with Michael and see what comes.
Chair
in front of
Scala is
each
really
one.
trying to get a lot on the table early this year, and that 5 weeks from tomorrow, we're gonna do a budget kickoff with, Carrie and I have already kind of shared some ideas, but we got a lot to lay out.
And I, personally, thank you. I've seen improvements since new board members have come forward. The options that we are given from 0 to, taking the full levy. I think that has made for much better conversation about responsibilities and where we spend our money and how we spend our money, that people can go back and share that with their constituencies. So I do appreciate that, and I appreciate the input from everybody. We're getting there.
I would say in recognition to all that too, and Chair Scala's recommendation, the agenda supplement has been modified to include a greater description of the
Yes.
budget
Oh my God, yes.
the ongoing impact of the budget. So really to address some of those things so you can have see in a broader perspective what that budget impact will be.
That would be much appreciated, I think, again.
So one of the
Hiring
things.
process into the board rules.
What's that?
Administrator hiring, sorry, go ahead, Terry.
Oh, no, that was me flipping the screen. I wasn't.
Administrator hiring process in the board rules. That was raised, and we're basically looking forward, I think, to the point where we are hiring a future person. We're not throwing you out, Peter, but
No.
I know that
None of us
20
will be
years
here.
ago,
It just doesn't exist.
but 20 years ago, I know the process was, and I wasn't on the board then, but I know that generally what they did was they cast a wide net and said, let's look nationwide, or I don't remember if it was nationwide or statewide, for someone who would be interested in this position here locally. The chair and the committee chairs sat down at some point in time and narrowed the applications down to the ones that they wanted to interview. And then I know that interviews were conducted like on a Saturday afternoon or something.
Yeah, I sat in this room on a Saturday morning, and there was a big group of, I don't know who it was, but it was.
Your members from the community, it was a big group, yeah, and then specific people from the board.
Go ahead.
So this might be, what I specifically mentioned last time was the contract negotiation process in the board rules for the administrator. That's what's not in there.
Okay, well, the other part's not there either.
Right, well, okay, but can we,
And so-
may we amend this to also include the contract negotiation process be covered in the board rules? And again, none of us will probably be here when this comes up again, but to have it in place.
I don't know that we have a problem with putting something in, but that was, I wanted to at least let the board, the rest of you know what we found was the process last time.
Oh, okay, all right.
So that,
Last time, the contract negotiation, nearly 20 years ago, involved the chairman and the finance chairman. It was those two. But to your point, Member Greeno, about changing the board rules, I think we've talked about that a little bit with Chairman Bueller. I mean, you can put something in there. He's pretty adamant that it's going to revolve around him. And you can make your board rules. If he's the chair, it's going to revolve around him, and he would welcome input and seek input from, in particular, the administrative services chair and the finance chair.
Then document it, just put it in there.
That's going to be the big question, and that's a conversation. Personally, I'll speak only for myself. I truly believe that when the county is looking for a new administrator, that should be designated in the board rules. I think if we're dealing with an existing situation and it's a continuation of a contract, assuming that there hasn't been anybody let go or left on their own, that's solely in the hands of the chairman. And what the chairman does is not in our rules, right? He does what he wants. And I would concur. I think that's a big, huge piece of the chairman's responsibility. And don't forget, we no longer elect from the board. We chose to elect countywide. he's got more responsibilities and it's a little bit more of a position of power, and I would concur with his analysis, is that, you know, it's his to negotiate and bring forward to the board. Now, I feel a little bit differently if we're seeking someone. We evaluate, right? How often do we evaluate?
Once a year.
Once a year. That was a softball. We have an opportunity as board members to talk to our chairman, both in writing and verbally, if we are unhappy with performances or we expect something different. I give that to him. He gets to continue to have those conversations with whomever is hired at that particular time. Different when we're seeking someone.
And back before, when they were seeking somebody before that position was elected and it was coming, and the chair was the county board elected chair.
Yes, completely different.
Well, it wasn't completely different. The first administrator's position was basically the right arm of the chair, because you ran administration. And that was the link that was put together. And that's why the chair has always had more responsibility for that particular appointment than others, because whoever the chair of the county board is going to do a lot of work with whoever they appoint as the county administrator. I mean, like I said, there was, if you go back before there's administrators, remember the chair's job was to put the budget together. I mean, you talk about
A lot of work.
a lot of work. Go ahead.
I won't do this, I'll do this.
Okay. I'll know the difference in one and two, okay.
Now this may be something that I didn't catch in orientation, but if there could be an explanation of what the county board chair's responsibility, enumerating those so that the board understands the differentiation,
Different lanes where.
that would really be helpful.
We did touch on that, we really did, but again, maybe it needs to be more
You're also
formalized.
drinking from a fire
I
hose.
appreciate
You mean like when
that.
I came in?
Yeah,
County
Oh, okay.
yeah, we did it when you came in, we did it when Paul came in, John came in again.
Okay.
But maybe we need to formalize that.
And there's a lot, it's a fire hose.
Better. Yeah, it is.
It's, and certainly the role of the chair was tested, you know.
Well, and even when we were going through this process and I was complaining, nobody said, I mean, Chairman Brewer just, this is my role, yeah, this is my purview. It's not. And there was a lot of fog around that at the time. I bet you, did people get mixed feedback on that?
Oh, I'm sure I gave some of it.
Oh, well, so, and that was my complaint, really, was the process. And so actually the process was the process, but I didn't know it, so.
And I appreciate the suggestion. I think, and I would say what we did different this time is Michael only came in and talked a little bit, and it was Michael who actually talked a little bit more when you guys came in. Maybe we'll change that too, but I appreciate that, the confusion, so thank you.
Well, part of that could have been the fact that Michael would do that too.
Well, that,
So
I wasn't gonna go there,
I'm not sure
but
that
okay.
Michael knew.
Okay.
I'm very
I mean,
grateful, I'll
when
tell
you
you.
come- I mean, that's, the downside of an elected, the true downside is that whoever steps in that first day, they have no idea. They don't, I don't care how good you are, if you haven't been on this board and you suddenly go from whatever your job was to chair, you don't know the extent of what you're doing. You can't. And it's not a slam against Michael or Jack or even when I did it. I had here 2 years, I was still going, I'm doing what? I mean, they appointed me on Saturday, or on Monday morning. Tuesday morning I was in Springfield, and Thursday morning I was at the chairman's meeting. And the next Monday I was the chairman of a review of whether or not Algonquin Township supervisor properly denied aid. That was in my first week. That was my first week as chair of the county board. You know, you're like, it is actually under state statute. If you appeal, if you're denied public aid by a township supervisor and they appeal, the chairman of the county board is the supervising officer at that hearing.
Wow.
You know, and you're like, what? So, you know, that was my first 7 days. And so, you know, did I think I was gonna be doing that? No, I had no idea that was one of my roles. So, and I hope for Chairman Julia's sake, he hasn't had that honor yet.
He has not.
But, so like I said, it's just got things you don't know, you know, you've never heard of, but that was the guy's position before. It falls back to that supervisor role when I talked about with Bob Anderson. It used to be the county board was the board of supervisors. It was made up of the supervisors of the township. It wasn't made up of personal electeds. So, at any rate, sorry, we have one more, special meetings. Yeah, if a third of the members of the board sign on, you can call one.
Go through it specifically, the process of how that works, please.
Okay, and so it's in the board rules, it's laid out, so it can be requested by at least 1/3 of the members of the board, but it's important to note, subject to Open Meetings Act too,
Right.
so you can't bring 6 people together and you could potentially violate Open Meetings Act.
Requested in writing.
So then they would request in writing, so you'd have to work kind of independently, in writing to the McHenry County Clerk specifying what you want to talk about at the special meeting. So you need to be topical on it, and then you have the time and the place of that meeting followed with the clerk. Once the clerk receives that, she'll immediately transmit notice in writing of such meeting to members of the county board. So 6 of them can determine, once again, working with the Open Meetings Act, then the county clerk would say to all the county board, okay, special meeting established for this purpose on this date, on this time. And of course, with Open Meetings Act, it has to be 48 hours in advance, notice has to be given to the public, so.
There are some exceptions for emergencies that can be called, but those are not usually what we're doing.
Correct, aside from any emergency of purpose, which is a different process. So it's pretty clear, but like I said, it can be done, and it has been done.
Yeah, we know how to do it. We've done it multiple times.
Yeah, it has done it, so.
It's one of those things you can do at a regular meeting. You literally pass the sheet around at a meeting, a
Which
regular
we've
board
done.
meeting, which has happened. The other hook in it is you still need a quorum at your next meeting. 6 isn't a
That was
quorum.
the challenge.
You need 6 to sign, but 11 to show up.
11 to show up, right.
10.
Well, no, not anymore, 10 to show up.
10 to show up, yeah.
But anyway, yeah, it's not very sophisticated. It just has to say what it is you're going to talk about at the meeting and get 6 board members to sign on. And yes, it's safer to do it at a meeting when you're already in an Open Meetings Act. You can pass it down the thing if you want to do that.
And of course, that tool's available. The county board chair can always call a meeting, and obviously that would be the
That's
best
another
bet.
way to do
In the
it.
event that the county board chair is not calling a meeting for a certain topic, that's your avenue.
And that's how when we had special ones, that was the issue. We had a chairman that didn't want to talk about certain things. We wanted to talk about them. So, at any rate.
System of checks and balances.
Yep.
Okay, we are ready. Any other questions about those? Terry, I know there was a 4th item, but I also know that 4th item that you talked about was something that it was where our resources came from, you know, like.
Oh, yes.
And I know that Carrie was working on that, that's
okay,
why I
that-
didn't put it on this
Yeah.
agenda.
Okay, so that was basically
I
for
didn't want you to
federal,
think we
state.
forgot you.
Okay, that was, federal, state, and then levy funding. And I think it's particularly important because if there are things where we might, and I don't really believe that this is the case, but who knows, where we might have federal funding in jeopardy, and if state funding also ties to federal funding there, but headcount. But one of the things is, for example, if we have 1,300 employees, but some of the employees are under certain elected officials, not under administrative. So how many are under Peter's responsibility versus the sheriff or, different elected officials. And then where is that funding coming from for different departments? So this is not I don't expect that all these things are in line. I expect that some things, there'd be supervisory responsibility in some areas, but funding in different areas. And I just think it would be very
Well,
informative.
I know that she was working on it. I just wanted to make certain you understood that we didn't blow it off, we're just.
In process.
It's in process.
And I think what you heard is pretty,
I sent it.
it's a lot.
I can resend it.
It almost needs to be read in tandem with an organizational chart to get to some
Right.
of your points.
Right,
Because,
exactly.
what can you directly influence over your influence over my position? It weaves, right? But still, it's even more convoluted in some respects because although my position does supervise the county engineer, most of the county engineer's money is not from property tax.
Right.
So-
Right, well, and not only that, let's say that, I was very concerned at the job growth in Illinois, but that does not reflect what we're going to find in McHenry County. But say, for example, that we found that McHenry County had the growth of, 100 net jobs and 50 in public sector or private sector and 50 in public, but whatever. But that those jobs were mandated and funded outside, that makes a difference.
Or mandated and not funded.
There you go too. So these are things that perhaps people within the administration know this and are doing things to lobby or advocate to fight against this, but wouldn't it be great if the public knew this so that they could say, hey, it's hard for people they're not involved when they're not informed. Nothing touches them because they just are unaware. And when they realize that this is how their money's being spent, whether they like it or not, then they might pay attention more. It doesn't hit home until you understand it. So that's all.
Gets us to capital plan update. Scott gets to take a break. And we know you're working on the parking lot.
We are.
Pretty cool.
I think we see that
Going well,
part.
yeah.
I appreciate that it hasn't affected me personally. So thank you.
We could start with the parking
Go right
lot,
ahead.
but I prefer to start in Crystal Lake because we have a
Oh,
little
yeah.
bit more to talk about there.
Okay, go right ahead.
So, contractors mobilized, we do have permits, they're posted, we have met with the city, we've had our pre-con with the city. So we're all on the same page now. What we're reconciling is the cost impact that we were given through this 6-month planned unit development review process by the city of Crystal Lake, which totals at this point $115,000 in cost impact.
To the city of Crystal Lake?
No, the city of Crystal Lake's fees were reasonable.
Okay.
Permit fees were $15,345 or something like that, which we felt, that compared to the cost impact that we received incrementally through the process, which would have been the changes to the facade, adding rain gardens, increased landscaping requirements, et cetera. Those total, we've been negotiating with the contractor to make sure that the unit costs we're receiving are fair and reflect common cost items as we, in the civil engineer and the architect, see them. But right now we're at $115,000. Our
Overages.
I'm sorry?
Of overages.
Yeah, those are new costs. We wouldn't consider those to be contingency costs because these are costs that we didn't intend to spend this money. The architect didn't produce plans that had these items in those plans.
They were in the plan review, if you will.
Yeah, plan review and complicated by the fact that this parcel is a part of a planned unit development, which has its own set of requirements, and it's in the Crystal Lake watershed. So right now, I've talked briefly with finance
and the health department, we're looking at, is there any ARPA money that hasn't been swept that we can attach to this project? I don't have the answer to that right now. Carrie Johnson, who works in finance, is on medical leave right now. I believe she may be able to have some conversations regarding this perhaps next week.
Yes.
So are there funds there that can be swept into this project? I don't know. If so, how much?
Well, can I just?
Or other health funds.
The reason for that is, remember, because at the end of '24, we had to have everything obligated to specific categories. So that's, I think, the challenge. There's some ARPA money that we could move, but it's just making sure we're moving it within the same narrow category from the US Treasury.
There's also funds that we estimated to be needed in the capital project portfolio for this year that we didn't use. So our estimated cost for the parking lot project were well under the money we thought we asked for to have as part of the budget in 2025. Likewise, we asked for funds to renovate some toilet rooms, bathrooms in the courthouse. Again, we were well underneath that.
Congratulations.
Well, thank you. Rooftop unit as well. We budgeted a certain amount of money for that. We're well under that cost, and we received a grant that has offset additionally that underage that we're at. So there's adequate funds, if you will, in these two areas. We're just trying to figure out what makes the most sense to bring forward a resolution to bring this back up to the funding that we originated, which was very competitive. We were only holding $100,000 in contingency for a $3 million project, which is a big gulp for me. Typically, a project like that, I would like to see a little bit more. However, we felt we could be aggressive, and we have a competent architectural team and a good contractor there. So that's what we face right now.
So my big question,
Right here.
so my big question to you would be, was this an anomaly that we had that 115,000 that we now recognize and won't repeat itself? Or was there a big mistake?
That's a great question. It's hindsight, I guess you'd say. Would I preferred that architects and engineering wouldn't have sent drawings out to bid, that Crystal Lake would have spent the amount of time they spent reviewing and amending? Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that was because it's in the
watershed.
Yeah, that's in the
what it is.
watershed, so that they obviously look at that a little bit more closely than they do other things?
It wasn't the watershed,
It was mainly the PUD and the process of Crystal Lake. They do a lot of due diligence, and they
Really
require
do.
a lot from developers, period, which is great if you live in the city of Crystal Lake. So, it's a fair question. I can't really answer that honestly.
You could just reassure me it won't happen again.
Yeah, I'd love to. We haven't had a project that we've brought forward since 2017 that we've had to ask for more money on. In 2017, we did some work to move the health department around. We brought them into this building. We did significant improvements in here, and then we renovated the building A to bring nursing fully into that building. And in that time, we had set a budget early, and we went out to bid, and we came in on our budget, didn't align with the bids as they came in. So in that case, we were early. We hadn't begun work. We hadn't committed these funds, and we were able to do value engineering. And I don't remember what the ask was, but we did end up increasing that budget prior to the start of construction. In this instance,
I see.
we green-lighted the project because we had some concerns about the timeline in which we needed to get this project completed by in order to capture fully those ARPA funds. And, yeah, you could, heck, I've made that argument in my head 25 times by now, why? But here we are, so.
You did the best you could with the circumstances that you had at the time.
I'd like to think so.
I thank you, I appreciate that.
So as long as we're on those topics, same project, I have some concerns also about the FF&E or the furniture piece of that. We have $100,000 budgeted to outfit the interior once this project is ready for furniture, cubicles, office chairs, etc. Plan is to reuse almost everything, say, in the client waiting area. The way the nursing has been reconfiguration, the drawings show new cubicles in there. We added space to animal control to bring their officers into, so they're not working out of a cat adoption room, and they have a work area. So those individual workstations, when we budgeted it, were somewhere around 80, 85,000. So we felt that the 100 would be fine. Current situation with tariffs is almost everything is that goes into this type of environment is made overseas, primarily China. Office cubicles, so we don't know where that's going to land. We don't write today, A, availability, and then B, what the ultimate tariffs might be on that furniture. So we intend to put a bid out for this furniture to see what comes back. And will they lock? We don't know that. So that's more of a conversation than today. But I thought I'd bring it up because it's real. We're seeing a little bit of that same apprehension with the coroners. Again, primarily some larger pieces of equipment have some tariff impact on them, but not in that project. I think the funding is okay, but yeah.
I mean, thank you, but again, very clearly, we need to recognize that decisions that are being made at different levels of government are going to impact us, some positively, some negatively. That's, I mean, when I say impact us, I mean financially. There's going to be more costs. But a question, do we ever talk, to our county partners at EDC or any of those things about tons, to Terry's point, I don't know how many jobs we added, but I certainly know that there were a lot of companies that downsized. Do we ever think that maybe some of those big, huge corporations have extra office furniture that's sitting in an office someplace they're not using? That maybe we could incorporate? I mean, I've had personal experience with at least 2 significant companies here that have donated office furniture to other not-for-profits.
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable idea.
Just again, timing is my bigger concern, not cost so much as who knows when we're going to get access to that.
Oh, for sure, yeah. I think that's worthy of exploration. We also took all the furniture that was existing in the nursing side. In my humble opinion, my standards for office furniture are lower than many. If you could come take a look at my 1960 desk and my 1983 chair, you'd say, hey, that works. Some expectations don't always align with mine. But however, the furniture that was in the nursing side, if configured, would work in the cubicle environment with just partitions placed between them rather than full cubicles, correct. And so I talked a little bit about that with the health department. I didn't get the full glazed over look, meaning
We wouldn't from them.
right. They were engaged in the idea, so that's a third option that we may consider in that. So right now, I'm not saying we're going to need more money there, but so I bring it up. So that's my bad news, Crystal Lake update today.
So now we're ready for some good news. Go ahead.
Yes.
Parking lot.
Right. Moving on to the parking lot. We started, the contractor performed well. They're well organized, they execute the work professionally. The workmanship is as expected. We have some construction observation, not a lot from a civil engineer, that key aspects of the work, they're on site. And so far, we haven't had any major conversations with that contractor. They did pull off a week ago to go to another job. They will be here next week, either midweek or latter part of the week. However, our schedule shows them starting phase 2 next week. So our schedule is still intact. We're right where we want it to be on the schedule. I was hoping we would just continue that 2-week game over here, but they decided to leverage that on another project. So I don't have a concern based on what we've seen out of this contractor that we would run out into past our anticipated completion date of end of August, early September. And we do not have any unexpected change orders that should drive that project over budget. Administration rooftop replacement project, as you know, that work was completed. We do have a punch list item still open on it. However, it's the equipment's being managed by our building automation system, working well. And the contractor and the manufacturer have been very forthcoming in helping us work through our punch list items. We're good. That's all I have.
Well, thank you, that's enough.
Don't say no.
No, it's a lot of work on your plate
It
this
is.
time of year, we understand.
You're welcome.
On up to the next hot seat.
Good morning, good morning.
How are you?
Welcome to May. So, I know you guys have gone a little long, so I'll keep it to some fun highlights that, you know, we're working on in human resources. I just wanted to take a minute and let you know the transition that we had. Deb Weingart retired last week. I think you met her last time and congratulated her on her next journey. So she left us on Friday, and we have added Ramon to our staff. Ramon was we interviewed 3 candidates. He was absolutely the strongest. He comes to us with a 10-year Navy background. So he was in HR for the Navy.
I would have guessed that looking at you.
So we're real excited to have him bring that diverse energy to our group. So we're doing that. Alessandra has moved over and is taking Deb's role in recruitment. So we're definitely advancing and growing and moving people within the department to keep us challenged and doing a good job for the county. So that's a little bit about what we've been doing internally. I personally am very excited to talk about the new management training that I've been hosting. We've done 4 weeks. We're doing 6. I have 9 people attending. I have 3 from state's attorney, 2 from the treasurers, 1 from, 1 from probations, 1 from workforce. So it's a really nice diverse group. I'm taking them through a process of teaching them the policies, understanding the rules, and then helping them develop as a leader. So they get homework, they have to read from their book, we have open discussions. I think it's just really good. I like the idea they get to meet other people from other departments and hear, you know, if someone has a union and what their struggles are and what somebody else does. So it's a really good interactive group. I like the size, I think it's manageable. So we have 2 more sessions left. Everyone leaves and seems to enjoy, you know, the process. So we've been really excited about
Are
that.
you going to do an evaluation at the end of it?
Yes.
Love that, if you would share that with us, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had a couple, Donna Kurtz has mentioned a few times that she is very happy and that her team is really excited about being part of this. So, so I felt like it was a really nice setting to have it a little bit smaller so I could interact with them well. Sometimes you get in a big group, you can see faces, you can see people drifting off. I think the one thing that we've really worked hard on, and this is good for all of us to understand, is our active listening skills. and how to really develop that. Because your brain can move 75% faster than what someone can speak. So you're drifting constantly, and you're not engaging in the level that you should, because you're anticipating what you want to say instead of listening. So it's been a really good skill to help them develop as being active listeners as managers, because you have to hear your employees. So that's been a fun skill to help them develop. So that's going well. We have a couple more sessions, and I'll report back on that next month. FMLA, we have transitioned to FMLA Source. Lorraine, our benefits and operation manager, worked very diligently to make sure everything went well. It was seamless. It's going on right now very, very well. So we're excited about that transition. This month is Women's Health Month. So we are having a speaker today. Dr. Yvonne Carney from Crystal Lake is going to be here to speak on some women's topics. We've had a lot of employees reach out to us in regards to having some knowledge and expertise around women's health. So we're excited to have her with us today. And it's Employee Appreciation Week. So we're going to have our taco bar on Friday. So you're all welcome to stop by if you'd like. And I actually had the pleasure of attending the drug court graduation last night. And that was just so moving to see what our employees do for these residents to help them, get back into their life. And it is just so moving, so touching. And it's just so important to see that what our employees do for the county. And that was just a really nice experience. So, any questions for me? No?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Now for everybody's favorite segment of administrative services, the communications report. For those who are watching at home, hello, I'm Lisa Schuler, Director of Public Affairs here at McHenry County Administration, and I am pleased to report on our progress. So, in the past month, County administration staff has organized a bi-monthly meeting of local communicators to discuss communications topics with our local government partners. And we had the pleasure of having 4 representatives from the Northwest Herald come out and speak with us all about best practices and how we can better share information with our shared constituents. Very successful, over 20 local government officials came in to learn. Also, we've had a lot of different communications collaborations go on over the past month. We've been working with the Treasurer's Office. I apologize for dinging all of your emails just now. We just put out the property tax bill release. Also, we worked with our Regional Office of Education and our Community Development Division as well. So again, you can see all of those releases and content for our social media pages on our respective websites and social media pages. Also, I would like to note a special communication that went out this past month. Our Department of Health collaborated closely with the Department of Health in Lake County to expand Operation Dropbox to 2 different counties now, and they put out a simultaneous blast on this initiative. Great job on their part, collaborating, across county lines and working with our Division of Transportation to make it possible. So again, very pleased to see Operation Dropbox appear all across the county to collect, items for our local vets. That being said, follower growth and reach, our social media pages are doing great. We're experiencing, growth on our Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and X and LinkedIn accounts. Also, we have reached over 100,000 accounts on our Facebook page this month. And we have garnered over 2.5 million impressions this year. So, if I don't talk about reach and our highest grossing posts this month, I'm going to be in trouble. So, my supervisor, the Deputy County Administrator, came to my office, knocked on my door, and said, Alicia, hey, Alicia, it's that time of year when the spongy moths are laying their eggs and putting those masses on the trees. You know, got to keep the public aware so that they can remove them. Here's a great link to a video from the city of Toronto explaining how to get rid of these things. Let's get it out there. And I said, okay, boss. We put it on Facebook, and to my shock, it went to 67,703 accounts all across Facebook. And this ranged from Ohio to Minnesota, even into Ontario, with folks
I just don't know.
who were who were all united by their shared desire to eradicate spongy moss. So I'm sure my counterpart in the city of Toronto is wondering why, you know, his or her YouTube metrics are spiking right now. But anyhow, it was a very successful post for our part, and we did gain some following on that, so very pleased. Also, our facility dog in the courthouse, Honey, has obtained her certification, and her post reached over 20,000 accounts across the area too. So good on her. And also our conservation district, you know, we advertised their 35 spectacular sites, and I can just tell that people are anxious to enjoy the beautiful weather we have here in McHenry County at our conservation sites. So again, those are some of the top posts that we had this month on Facebook. And again, I don't want to go through all of them, but again, you can see that we're reaching a pretty substantial amount of people, and I look forward to keeping up that good momentum.
Thank you. I want to take somebody out of turn. Joe, come on up. Hi, Joe. This is a future topic item, and then we'll get back to Pete, and we'll be able to close. Joe called me the other day. So 180 days before the March primary, we have to decide salaries if we're going to change salaries. Go ahead, Joe.
So, hi, and thanks for allowing me this sort of informal discussion. Two things really quick off topic. I think it was you, Pam, who asked about how we would get ethics information to candidates.
Yeah.
We are so instructed, the clerk's office could give that to them when they file their paperwork with us, for those that file with us. So that's a slam dunk.
But yeah, Terry can run that through the commission.
Right.
Thank you for that offer.
Yeah.
That's a great idea.
And Abbott Labs has a fantastic warehouse of used furniture. They buy top notch and they replace it like every 4 or 5 years. So a great place from a former business owner who shopped there himself. So the reason I'm in front of you today is to just, again, informally address clerk's pay. So you don't need a protractor and a slide rule to know that the economy has been dramatically affected over the past several years. If we look at 2018 to 2025, the average wage growth, according to the Social Security Administration, is around 37%. The impact on the dollar is about negative 26%. And when I look at my peers, and then we also have to ask who are my peers, they track about 26% growth in that time. So who are my peers as I see them? You might first look to other clerks. However, a clerk is not a clerk is not a clerk in every county. Some are clerk recorders, some don't have anything to do with elections, some have less to do with elections. So if I look at my peer department heads in McHenry County, that tracks about 26.24% growth since 2018. Add to that the fact that in 2018 actually took an additional office on.
Did we make any adjustment then for that,
No.
taking on the other office? No?
No.
So you're still receiving just a clerk's salary and we,
Right.
okay, thank you.
Yeah. So again, today is not a formal discussion, but I think it makes sense to have that discussion sooner rather than later as I and others consider running for office and all the things that go with that, to know exactly what that looks like come that time.
And for full disclosure, Joe called me about this. It was coincidentally, literally an hour after I just approved the agenda. So I knew there was no way I could put it on here today, but I thought it is a good future topic.
Sure.
We do have several months before we have to set that, but
Yeah.
any positions we're gonna talk about, and I know once upon a time you talked about doing some things too with the county board members, stuff
Yeah.
as to health insurance versus pay and what have you. So I'm bringing it up to say, guys, do you wanna talk about this in the upcoming meetings or not?
Yes.
And if you do, then we'll put it on. If you don't, well, you know, you're stuck with what you got. But, I mean, go ahead, Pam.
I'm gonna make an assumption that you're gonna provide us with information and comparables and all the things that you just talked about.
Yes, absolutely.
And
Yeah.
a recommendation?
Indeed, yes, yeah,
Thank you. I
yeah,
would appreciate
absolutely,
it.
absolutely.
Are you guys okay with that coming forward? So we'll bring that up at a future meeting?
Is there any other office that,
Well, there's other offices that all.
will we notify them and let them know that we've started a process, and if they want to do that,
We can certainly look at
You don't
it.
need to let me know.
All right, yeah, we can do that. I mean, it is, like I say, if you're going to do a change, you gotta do it before, what is it, September?
Oh,
It's 6
gosh, I
months
hate doing
before.
that kind of math on the
Okay,
fly.
well,
but
it's 6
yeah,
months
it's,
before the March primary.
Yeah,
Better
I
sooner
just-
than later, I
I
would
just
say.
don't want to do it one at a time or have somebody
Right,
come later and
right.
say, I didn't know. And I also think that if we're going to be responsible, I would like to know how many are asking and how much it's going to affect the budget. So, yeah,
Right,
that's
yeah.
all, that's all.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, we will do that. Now it's your,
Thanks, Rebecca.
sorry, I just.
Got me off track here. Okay, real quick, you notice Adam Latundra is not here in the room. Adam is our fiber expert. He's part of a meeting this morning, a statewide meeting, an update on fiber. We are expecting the first rollout, the first wave of announcements on where fiber is going to be sited with the public money pairing with the private dollars on the 19th. Not anticipating a great deal of activity in McHenry County at first, although we don't know. But because of some of the targets that the state put on where the dollars would go with, you know, the difficult to serve areas, we don't think we're gonna have a real broad sweep this time around. But applications for the second wave are accepting now and available in about a quarter or so, and I think we'll have a much better shot on the second one. When I say we, again, it's not us, it's private entities serving McHenry County residents. That having been said, and I don't want to be alarmist, there is a bill in the House at the federal level to change some of the criteria by which these dollars have been allocated. But we're a ways away from that being reality, but if it were to come to pass as presented, it might require the state to recast all of their bidding process that they've done over the last several years in this protracted process, which would further protract it. So we're keeping our eyes on that as well. And again, I don't want to be alarmist because, you know, there's lots of things that are proposed that don't come to pass. But we'll keep our eye on that. Yeah.
And when you do, can I also ask that if there's a concerted effort for people to collaborate together and send some kind of a notice or letter, that you bring that to law and government too, so that if we need to be legislatively proactive, we can do that?
We'll put that on your next agenda.
Thank you.
Yeah. Pleased to report that last week, the Village of Wonder Lake, with the county's partnership and in R1, we submitted an unserved communities grant. So it's a planning grant, but it would help them figure out if they're ever to serve all those thousands of unincorporated residents on the east side of Wonder Lake, you know, how would we govern that? How would we pay for it? Those kinds of things. So it's an awesome project.
Needs
Kudos,
to be done.
just kudos.
Also, with R1 and MCEDC hosted this morning a SEDS meeting, the Comprehensive Economic Development Strategy meeting. They're developing the revised SEDS document, which we will approve in October of this year. But they hosted the meeting this morning in Harvard at US Medical Club. So it was an interesting experience for folks to get up there. I wanted to let you know that I've been working with the Mental Health Board and the Children's Advisory Center, at Children's Advocacy Center, pardon me. Yeah, that's the group that deals with.
Neighbor,
What's that?
they're across the street.
Yeah, they're your neighbors, And they're tenants in that building and looking to become owners of that building. So we're working with the Mental Health Board and your Advanced McHenry County dollars to see if we can't shuffle some of those around it and make that a reality for them. I think that we're on the cusp of getting something together there. On Monday of this week, we had a representative from the governor's office in the building. Their intergovernmental relations outreach person from was here to talk with myself and Shaylin and Alicia and Scott and Mark Picos, and we had a nice meeting and got to meet her. And yesterday we had the Northeastern rep from DCEO out to have a tour of the college and meet with Picos, and I got to have lunch with him or her, excuse me, and we toured Flowcon in Woodstock.
Oh, nice.
Steve Bellow's operation. That is amazing what is going on in there, and the amount of it's automation, but there's a lot of people working there too. I mean, it's cool. So that's my report.
Very nice.
Questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other future topics that we didn't cover? And I know I pulled it out of order, but I was
Here. I said you weren't here. I just got here.
We covered you, you're safe.
I'm saying, okay, that's all. Any questions, let me know.
Carolyn, you got anything that you wanted to share with us? Sorry, I didn't notice you earlier. Okay.
No, I'm just listening in, but I was gonna say before Joe left, I just happened to talk, but he left kind of quickly. I was actually talking to somebody, there you are. Over here. I was talking to somebody yesterday, really, really thrilled with our new election center.
Oh, great.
Had a great experience, and it was very, very cool.
That was June, that's good. That's
All right. With that then, with no other
Motion to adjourn.
hands up, motion to adjourn, Pam, second by Paul. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned. Thank you, folks.